Hello and welcome to another episode of Video Game Logic. Today's episode was recorded on May the 31st, 2022. I'm your host, Game Psychologist, and with me, as always, doing weird things, being unsure where to go.
Effing rage.
On today's show, foreshadowing, we will be discussing this month's Game Club, which is Final Fantasy XII. We will reveal our next Game Club. The Heart of Russia DLC for Eurotruck is postponed indefinitely. France bans official use of anglicized gamer words. Lootbox, I'm sorry, that title still gets me. Lootbox laws block Diablo Immortal launch in Belgium and Netherlands. Embracer establishes the Embracer Games Archive. Quote, save as much of the games industry as possible, end quote. Timestamps will be in the show notes following their respective topics. Hello, Rage.
Hello.
How are you today?
Good, because I'm able to delete a certain ISO off my computer in about 5 minutes.
Yeah, wow. That's you could just go delete it now.
Yeah, but what's the fun in that?
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, I feel perhaps not as strongly, but certainly along the same lines as you. I can't believe that, I mean, based on the preliminary conversation, I can't believe that with my lukewarm feelings, I'm going to be the positive one on this one.
Oh, aren't you usually?
Sometimes, although usually it's like, no, I'm peppy, and on this one, I'm like, there's better. And you're like, no, burn it all down. Maybe, literally. I mean, I guess with all that foreshadowing, let's just dive in. What do you want to tell the good folks about Game Club in case they've never heard what we do for Game Club before?
Is our monthly thing where we come together and play the same game at the same time, even though that's become more often what we do anyway. It's when we can have an in-depth discussion about a game that we both played at the same time. And for this month, what we were originally going to do, Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac Age, on Game Pass. Unfortunately, we set Game Club out several months in advance. And like the month before, this one, May, they announced Final Fantasy XII was leaving Game Pass. It was either the month before or 2 months ago. And this was kind of our scramble to not have to redo a choosing.
Right.
So we ended up going to the PlayStation 2 version of Final Fantasy XII, which is the original one. And Final Fantasy XII has this whole weird thing going on where, and that's even before we get to gameplay, where the launched in Japan and then launched in the US. Then they launched a updated, honestly, better sounding version in Japan and ported that to Europe, and it never saw an English release. And there are workarounds to essentially apply an English patch to the Zodiac Age. Or, that's what they eventually remastered and re-released on Steam and Game Pass and whatnot, but we ended up just going for the base game, and what a mistake that was.
Honestly, I don't know if a remaster would have fixed it unless the part of the remaster was redoing the entire gameplay mechanics of the game.
Part of the remaster was putting a job system in the game instead of the asinine license system.
So something more akin to Final Fantasy XIV?
I'm not 100% sure. I've never really played Final Fantasy XIV. It's, I guess the closest I actually have to experience with the job system would be like 10-2 with the dress spheres.
Yeah. Let's back up a second.
Yes.
And so, I mean, yes, we played Final Fantasy XII, the quote-unquote original release for PS2. We obviously emulated it and played it that way, using our totally legit PS2 BIOS. Wink, wink.
Have you know I ripped that myself?
Absolutely. So did I.
And I actually do have Final Fantasy 12 around here somewhere on disc. Actual PlayStation 12, Final Fantasy 12. Or
PlayStation 12.
Yeah, PlayStation 12. Yeah, very advanced, right?
Very advanced, yes.
PlayStation 2, Final Fantasy 12.
And I mean, it's not your typical Final Fantasy game.
I think this. Well, I mentioned it before when we were in our pre-show babble. This was kind of the harbinger of where Final Fantasy was going in modern Final Fantasy.
Yeah, Final Fantasy.
Well, I was going to say in that Final Fantasy has always had at least a little bit of a build-up, but at least in the PlayStation 1 era and the early PlayStation 2 era, it wasn't, more than an hour or two.
Yeah, you would have your intro, some basic stuff to introduce you to the game and the story plot and whatever, and you'd spend an hour, maybe two, kind of on rails, and then the game opens up a lot for you. It might not go fully open, but it opens up a lot.
Or at least introduces you to the actual plot.
Yeah.
Final Fantasy 12, I was at hour 11, and I was just getting to the actual plot of the game.
Yeah. Which is still not as bad as Final Fantasy 13.
Yeah, but supplementary stuff anyway.
Yeah.
So
now I hear you saying, dear listener, well, Final Fantasy games stories have always been kind of incomprehensible. And you know what? Fair enough. Fine. Let's just agree on that point for the sake of argument. I do think I disagree. I think there are better and worse Final Fantasy stories, but for the sake of this argument, okay, sure. Let's say that all Final Fantasy stories are incomprehensible. The characters in Final Fantasy 12 are not interesting. Nowhere near as interesting.
I'll say that one character is somewhat interesting, but that's more because I kept picturing him as David Bowie.
Nice. So I have not played, to prove my point, I have not played Final Fantasy 7, 8, or 10 in many years. But, the main characters of those games are Titus and Squall and Cloud. And I can rattle off some of the support characters for each of them and some basics about their story. And I mean, the last Final Fantasy game I played that was like mainline Final Fantasy, played it in depth for a long period of time, was Final Fantasy X. I replayed Final Fantasy X 6 or 7 years ago. And then that's it. I haven't played any of the others more recently than that. And I didn't even play any of the quote unquote release, remaster, whatever Final Fantasy VII.
Rewrite.
Yeah. I didn't even play any of that. And I had to pull up the wiki because I can't remember most of the names of the main cast. I remember Vaughn.
I remember Balthier because that's David Bowie to me.
Yeah, Balthier is David Bowie. And he is. I mean, he's like a gay sky pirate. Like, that's what I think of him.
I was going to say flamboyant. His companion, Fran, I had to go look at videos to hear what she sounds like because I could only remember one time she talked in 11 fucking hours.
But she does have bunny ears and a cute ass.
And that's the entire purpose she's there. She's 2 water balloons slapped on a cardboard cutout. Because she has absolutely no personality. She has as much personality as the license system. And the combat system. And it's just, So
you're real angry. Neither of us really got into the story. We played it for about the same amount of time. I just couldn't play it anymore.
Okay. Well, I actually got stuck. Not because of the combat system, but because the game kept trying to do things that its combat system really didn't want to do. As in, running away from shit. There's multiple boss fights where it's basically, okay, time to run away from this massive non-stop horde of enemies, or enemies that are way, way, way stronger than you. And the Gambit system has it where that if you have any of your party members set up to cast a spell, they'll stop dead in their tracks and cast a spell. Which, okay, fine. But if the player character is controlling them, you can run around and cast until the actual effect goes off. And then they stop. Which makes all the running around trying to avoid, the hunters that's chasing you, the massive horde of guards that's chasing you. It makes it harder than what it should be. And I honestly think I underleveled because I was so utterly, mind-bogglingly bored by the combat system.
All right, so let's talk about the combat system, because I think the combat system is the thing. So one thing I always do for Gameclub games, especially older games that we play, is I go to look at contemporary reviews from the time period. And everyone was obsessed with the combat system. Because as far as Final Fantasy goes...
Because of the gambits.
Well, the gambits, and also the fact that it's a quote-unquote real-time combat system. There's no more random battles. You can see all the enemies on the map and engage with them, quote-unquote, in real time.
Yeah, Chrono Trigger had that too, and that was like 5 years earlier.
Yes, but as far as Final Fantasy games go in the mainline series, because Final Fantasy XI was an MMO that had more real-time battles and whatnot, and this is kind of thought of as separate from that because it's their, single-player experiences. But everyone, lost their goddamn mind in reviews about this system. And on the one hand, I can understand it. It's a deep departure from the quote-unquote, history of the franchise, doing turn-based or somewhat, mostly turn-based battles. And then this being, not turn-based, in real time. There's some automatic actions, and certainly you can set it up to pause for you whenever it pops up for you to choose to do things, whenever your cooldown timers come off and whatever. You can make it a little more turn-based, but it is a vast departure, and people just seem to love it, and it feels clunky and unfocused, and the fact that it feels like combat had to be slowed down so much, either because of a combination of animations, because the animations are really slow and not punchy and don't feel weighty at all. Regardless of how good the system is, it feels bad. And I'm not convinced the system is good, but for the people out there in the reviews who claimed that the system is good, it feels bad because it's slow.
They've just also
it feels clunky.
Very poorly.
That could be it too. It could have aged very poorly. So I took some notes. I've got a bullet point list of half a dozen notes.
I think my biggest problem with the combat system is that everything takes ages. Even if you're out of combat, you still have to go through the entire, casting animation for a simple heal spell whenever let's pick a Final Fantasy almost at random, Final Fantasy VII, you just use it in a menu.
Yeah. And Final Fantasy VIII, and 9, and 10.
I mean, if you wanted to use an item, you have to do it through the same combat system, or the same menu system in or out of combat. It took me a while to realize that's how you're supposed to use items in this game, and not go into the actual pause menu and use them there when you're not in combat, because it's just that's been the norm for the rest of the prior series. It just made things so damn slow, and on top of that, the mana regeneration. So I had Tits McGee. Playing essentially healer because, right?
Yep.
Well, if you get in a few nasty fights, she's going to tank out or bottom out her mana. Well, there's no mana regeneration if you're standing still. This is something I realized eventually. So after a couple of nasty fights, I would just go off to the side of the map and just start running everybody around in circles to jog essentially in place to regenerate mana, because nobody's selling ethers yet because I'm too early in the game.
Yeah. So here's what I wrote my notes about the combat. This is all of my notes about combat. It's pretty short. The battle system removing random encounters, I believe, is good. but it's awkward and handled poorly. Excessive amounts of enemies on maps make it a slog to go anywhere. Gambits feel off in a way that's difficult to explain. They're too fiddly and clunky. The whole combat feel is lackadaisical, leading to a, quote, air quotes, wrong game feel. It just feels sloppy, unbalanced, and like too many people had too many ideas.
I think my problem with the Gambit system, on paper is actually, really nice. The problem is that there's so much luck behind buying individual Gambits.
Yeah, so I looked. You can get a maximum of 12, but every character only starts with 2.
Yeah, and they're all on that license board, which... can we talk about the license board for a moment?
Yes. Go ahead.
I want to stop and apologize for the Final Fantasy VIII. I absolutely hated the draw system because it made it feel like I was being punished for, using magic and such.
Mm-hmm.
I would much rather use the draw system. I would deal with Squall's moody, brooding ass because even though he's brooding and grumpy, he at least has a personality. He's not some Aladdin wannabe with a half vest who's constantly getting himself into trouble.
Right.
And I think that's my other kind of problem with it is just, I'll get back to the Gambit system. But Vaughn and Pinello were originally not part of the main story. It was rewritten part of the way through because Balthier was actually the main protagonist.
Yeah, I did not know that.
Yeah,
I was unaware of that.
Yeah, essentially it was rewritten because focus groups didn't like an older character and wanted a teenager. So, an old man of the age of 22, according to the Wikipedia.
Auron is my favorite character from Final Fantasy X, and he's fucking an old man with a giant sword. Actually, I don't know how old he is.
And zombie.
And yes, that too. I guess I'm weird, though.
No, he kicked ass as well. Only character I didn't like in Final Fantasy X was, Kamari.
Yeah.
But then again, does anybody really like Kamari?
I don't think anybody likes Kamari, no. But, yeah, go ahead. You go ahead for a minute. I have a couple things, but you go ahead first.
So the license system is basically like the condensed down everything else that's wrong with the game, where it makes everything copy and paste. Everybody shares, at least, mind you, this is the PlayStation 2 version. We do not have the job system in this. Everybody shares the same license board. And as you kill enemies, you slowly, and I mean slowly, gain license points. And you can spend those on the license board, and they may give you gambits, they may unlock the ability to use certain magics. Mind you, you still have to go find those magics. You still have to go find the items. You still have to find even the armor. And it just feels very weird and clunky to have to figure out, okay, I just found this better sword, but I need like 75 license points to even equip it. Why are they caring so much about licenses? They're pirates.
Yeah. The license board, I think, also highlights another flaw with the characters and the character development, because you've got vastly different art styles for your characters, but because they all share the same license board, they feel very, like you said, cookie cutter. And for better or for worse, all of the previous games that have had some kind of system that forces their characters down a certain path, that does add a certain amount of character to them, because it's like, that's what they do. We've used Final Fantasy X as repeated examples. So they've got this sphere. I don't remember what the specific name is, but it's like the sphere grid. Yeah.
It was the sphere grid. And that's also why people don't like Kamari, is that he starts dead center and basically goes onto another character's sphere grid and becomes a copy of them.
Yeah.
Outside of the fact that Kamari also kind of sucks.
But the sphere grid, for better or for worse, it gave you some limited choices in the development of your character. But it's like, this is what they do. This is a caster, a magic user. So all of the stuff on their sphere grid has to do with improving their magic. This is your melee character. This is a character that could go, one of two different, like, whatever. But like, that helped develop their characters. Whereas in this, it's like, well, anybody can be anything you want with no direction, and their design kind of sucks. And I think that's great if you're playing a quote-unquote Western style, like, blank slate RPG. You want that. You want your character to be anything that you want. But Final Fantasy games have always been about the different characters and their interactions with one another as they go on this adventure. Even all the way back in the original Final Fantasy, like, yes, you did not have characters in the sense of like named characters. You get to pick your party, but you had the black mage, or the black mage and the white mage and the knight and the rogue, right? And the rogue, maybe it was red mage. I don't know. There were different mages that had access to different magic, and you had to pick your starting characters and build a party based on those differences or similarities in what you were trying to do. That's always been the core component of Final Fantasy. And taking that away, but still trying to keep your flamboyant character design, like, there's a disconnect there. The dirty word, ludonarrative dissonance, comes into play. All right, I'm done with my part for a second. If you wanna talk about something else.
I mean, let's talk a little bit about the story, because they kind of throw you into the deep end, and that opening cutscene, I will say, did kind of hook me there for a moment, because they talk about this grand like invasion, and we were starting to play this like right in the beginning of the Ukraine-Russian war. Or at least I did. I think I was, a couple weeks ahead of you on that one?
Yeah, you started a couple weeks before me, because I think that was the week that I was moving.
And it just, it had this, ooh, this is going to be really good. And then, okay, well, let's kill off this interesting character and go to his brother. Because it's going to be Far Cry 3, where, hey, let's take the interesting brother, kill him, and give you the less interesting diet version.
Right?
Oh. Trying to think if there's any other like major grind. That's the one that I really that got me, is that the license board kind of comes back again, where there's so much that you have to just grind for if you want to be able to outfit your party in any decent way. And since I didn't, got kind of stuck when I got my 5th party member. I mean, you only have 6 party members, which actually seems a little on the low side, doesn't it?
It does. Most Final Fantasy games have gotten more, or you'll have a larger sort of rotating temporary cast than this game has.
But they do have a few occasional guests that pop in that you have no essentially interaction with at all.
Yeah.
But they just expected you to kind of just dive in and basically MMO grind this. Either that or go all out on the hunt system, which we really didn't bring up yet. So there's, did you do any of that outside of the one that you're required to do for the story?
No. In my head, I was like, if I want to hunt monsters, I'll go play Monster Hunter.
Well, I tried a couple of them, and the difficulty massively jumps up. To the point that there's one in the Undercity that you have to go tackle.
Yeah.
And he puts fucking Doom on you.
Oh.
Which for those who are unfamiliar with that status effect from Final Fantasy, it's a countdown timer of going from 10, and when it reaches 0, that character dies. And it's either race it down or try to get it where it's staggered, so you could just constantly start pumping in revives, but that comes back around to the whole well, grind for money now because now you need to go chain monsters together to try to get better drops. Which that's kind of the other thing is that the kill mechanics on the overworld, they have a chain mechanic in this where if you kill a certain number of a type of monster in a row, it basically ups their drops. So if you're farming for something in particular, because why wouldn't you be doing that in a Final Fantasy game instead of like an MMO, right?
Yep.
You would start getting better and better things, but if you kill something that breaks the chain, well, you're out of luck. You just break the chain, you're going to restart. And some of the rare drops also tie into the bazaar system, where as you sell items and sell certain combinations, they become basically fodder for other characters off screen to create items to resell. And that's an entire system that's basically just, TV Tropes has the term God dang it, where the only way that you can know what's going on is either by pure luck, brute force, or getting a strategy god. And it's just, there's some rather obscure combinations.
Yeah.
And on top of that, the treasure chests are also randomized. There's a common loot table and a rare loot table. And they do reset whenever you go to an area or after a certain amount of time. But, you're once again grinding. If I wanted to grind this much, I would reactivate my old account for EverQuest.
Oof. Sick burn. The grinding in this game bothers me because the combat system is boring, but I don't mind grinding in any game. Like, I like grinding in video games.
If it was interesting, yeah, but I turned the speed up all the way and everything was still sluggish. It might just be the fact that other Final Fantasy games, whenever you got into combat, things felt snappy. Things felt immediate. In this, because everything's tied to an action bar that doesn't start until you start an action, it has this incredibly long delay, short of items are pretty much immediate. That's the one caveat. But they're so underpowered compared to using a potion versus a heal, right?
Yeah, which is what I was saying earlier. Like, it feels very sluggish, regardless of how sluggish it actually is. It feels very slow. I think there's a
reason why the Zodiac Age remaster has a speed up option.
Yeah,
I mean that's kind of telling right there, huh?
Yeah, I mean I do think it's too slow, but regardless of how slow it actually is, its design makes it feel even slower.
Oh, and I did have one little plot point thing. So, at a certain point, you get on, David Bowie's airship and fly to this floating city, which is really cool. But you're looking for Pinello, Vaughn's friend? Question mark? I think it's friend. I mean, honestly, the characters are so blank that it's
generic.
Yeah. So, and she got damseled in distress because, of course, she did. No idea how they found her. No idea why they found her. Right?
Yep.
It's just, okay, oh no, I'm suddenly getting kidnapped. Help. So
the plot needs to move forward.
The plot needs to actually start. And that kind of reminds me, there was this moment of Vaughn learning that one character is the princess, and it's like, duh, right?
Yeah, weren't you paying attention? No, of course you weren't.
I mean, they the moment they went on and on about how the princess has been missing and presumed dead. Well, she's right there, dude.
Yeah.
Anyway, David Bowie tells him, okay, remember, no names. We need to stay undercover. And then, not even 5 minutes later, he's talking to some random kid and giving everybody their proper names and not even trying to hide. Right?
Yeah.
It's just the kid has the IQ of a room temperature slab of butter.
So it's real mushy.
Mm-hmm.
But he spreads well on toast.
Well, I'm sure there's fan fictions of him spreading well.
Probably. So I have a couple of more notes to bring up, if that's okay.
Go ahead. Go for it.
Okay, so the biggest one that I have left is games are not made in a vacuum. Final Fantasy XII was being developed around some tumultuous circumstances at Square.
Until
Squaresoft.
Yeah, actually, it held the record for the longest development until Duke Nukem Forever came out.
Yeah, so it was. It had multiple sort of creative director swaps. The company posted its first year in the red after. I don't. This was some of the stuff I looked up, so I don't remember the specifics, but they had like several years of like in the black. They were projecting a certain number of sales. The game didn't get finished. It went in the red, which caused even further developmental hell issues, resulting in delays. There were multiple creative director swaps and multiple director swaps for various departments. During this time was when Squaresoft was working on acquiring the Enix part of Square Enix, and sort of restructuring the company. I'm not trying to make necessarily excuses for the game, but things don't happen in a vacuum. And I think part of the reason, if the base systems for everything were already in place with all this stuff going on, I don't think the game could have been quote unquote saved in the way that we are talking about it. But I think it might feel a little less muddled, maybe a little more, have a little bit more direction to it, because everything that was going on in the background would have helped the team be able to focus their development efforts and prioritize. So there's that. The second thing is I kept coming up with comparisons for games that did a certain system better or a certain thing better.
Dragon Age Origins for the AI.
Yes, Dragon Age Origins for the AI. But honestly, the one that I kept coming back to was Last Remnant. I've talked about this on the show before. It's been
another game that I hate.
years. Yeah, and I know you don't like Last Remnant. I really like Last Remnant. Remnant. One of the things that I like about it the most and how it handles these things is it does a much better job handling, one, a lack of real-time battles. Its maps are not as sort of circuitous and not so filled with enemies. And then it has proper turn-based combat. I think you get the best of both worlds. And certainly it has an incomprehensible story, it has a JRPG story, etc. But Last Remnant, I think, because Last Remnant was also made by Square Enix after Final Fantasy XII. I think Last Remnant, if Final Fantasy XII had come out and had been the systems of Last Remnant in terms of the way that it handles its enemies, starting combat, engaging in combat, and then had a more traditional JRPG cast, I think it would have been a much nicer transition into Final Fantasy 13 and 15. And yes, 13 is real bad. It's a worse offender because 13 is 12
every
didn't
problem
work.
that we've talked about times 10.
Yeah, it's let's double down. What it is we didn't go hard enough on the things that everybody complained about. So let's go harder. And then 15 is, I think, what they were trying to do with 12, and whether or not that works for you, again, is personal preference. I haven't played 15. I know that you have.
I played a little bit of it. And based on what I saw, basically, they were trying to do with Final Fantasy 15 what Marvel eventually did, where they did a distributed story across a bunch of different aspects of media.
Mm-hmm.
But for those who are in the, that don't want to, buy the manga, watch the prequel anime, buy the ramen cup noodle and whatever else to get the entire story. It leads it feeling, well, like Final Fantasy 12.
Right. Fair enough. So, yeah, I feel like Final Fantasy 12 has not aged well. Anything that might have received praise, justified or not, 15 years ago, is not deserving of praise now. And at best, it's pretty middling. And you have an even lower opinion of it than that.
Yeah. This is the worst Final Fantasy I've played, bar none.
Have you played Final Fantasy 13?
I watched the cutscene and saw it was choppy on my computer, so I got a refund on it. Still a better experience.
Yeah, Final Fantasy 13 is worse. I like the characters better in Final Fantasy 13, but everything else is worse in Final Fantasy 13. But that's where this is. We're not doing Final Fantasy 13. We're doing 12. That's the issue you run into with Final Fantasy games as well. Everyone has a favorite, and for the most part, everyone seems to agree, at least on what the top few games are.
Yeah,
Final Fantasy 12 never makes that list.
Final Fantasy 12, I looked at some tier lists, because of course there's tier lists for them now.
Of course.
And it's either top tier for some people or bottom tier for some people. And there's no in between.
Yeah.
And I think part of it also might be if you played the original version or played the Zodiac Age, because some things they did was they removed the license system and made a job system instead, which, while not fixing the combat system, it makes it less cumbersome and less cookie cutter.
Yeah.
They rebalanced the loot. One of the optional bosses, they removed 90% of the health on it.
Oh, wow.
In the base game, it would take hours to kill. No hyperbole.
That's pretty intense.
So, yeah. Oh, and one other complaint that I've seen pop up and that we kind of skip over because you were playing on totally legitimate systems.
Absolutely.
Is just how stingy they are with save points and how long it could go, right?
Oh, yeah. That's a problem I've always had with Final Fantasy games.
But with this one, where everything is a
You just
slog
have
on
save
top of it.
states. Yeah, but running an emulator, you just save state.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and since we brought it up, or you brought it up, Orin, the old man, 35.
Wow.
That's a hard 35.
Yeah. Honestly, though, I feel it. I'm not even 35. I feel it.
Maybe he had type 1 diabetes.
Maybe.
Well, we know he had a drinking problem. Wait, I take that back. He had no problem drinking.
Ayo.
So, my final thoughts on Final Fantasy 12, cast into the pits of Mount Doom.
Yeah. Watch the pre-rendered cutscenes on the YouTubes.
Yeah, if you want an experience, go look up Final Fantasy 12 the movie, because there's always one of those for more story-centric games, and it just stitches all the cutscenes together. And who knows, it would be less painful. And hey, maybe the characters actually will show some character, right?
Yes, I'm looking that up now to see how long it is. Final Fantasy 12. The movie. 6 hours and 38 minutes.
I should tell you something about the story of this game, huh?
Yeah.
Because now I need to go check something. Okay, this ought to tell you something's up with the story of this game. Final Fantasy X HD Remastered, the movie, is over 11 hours. Something's messed up.
Yeah.
And since it's focused mostly on the cutscenes and story, that should tell you that there's a lot of padding in Final Fantasy 12.
Yeah. Most of the... I didn't look at how long to beat for it. Let's see.
I was just heading over there.
A couple of the reviews I read had people saying that they played for 60 to 70 hours.
I don't want the Zodiac Age. Zodiac Age is showing 40.
It says Final Fantasy 12, main story 61, main plus extras 92, completionist 160.
I mean, I put 11 in, and I was even getting into the story. And part of that was, trying and failing on some of the hunts. Or the other one is that, this is one thing I will commend them on Final Fantasy 12, is that even though there's no reason to, they do cut you loose on the world pretty early, where you could just run wherever the hell you want and get way over your head.
Yeah.
So you are cut loose into the open world pretty damn soon. There's no reason for you to go to most of these places, but you could go and just grind your way up, right?
Yeah.
But it's just... It feels like Final Fantasy 12 is just using the engine of Final Fantasy 11 to make a single-player game. And they just failed at it.
Yeah.
Because the entire time playing Final Fantasy 12, part of me remembered Pro Jared's video on Final Fantasy 11. And just seeing parallels to that as well.
I've never seen that review.
I have
to look it up later.
I'm pretty sure it was Final Fantasy 11 that he talked about. But it was just, So, do we want to award this worst game club of the year right now, or do we want to wait till January, right?
We'll see.
Because it's hard to imagine something worse.
It is hard to imagine something worse, but you never know. We could be greatly surprised. But something that we won't be surprised by is what our next Game Club game is. So for the month of... What month is next? June. For the month of June, we're going to be doing Hardspace Shipbreakers, which just released from early access into quote-unquote version 1.0 on Steam and Game Pass and other places where you can buy games. We're going to be playing it using Game Pass, and during our pre-game discussion, our pre-episode just chit-chat, we talked about Shipbreakers for like 10 minutes, unprompted. So probably going to wind up the total opposite kind of conversation than this one that we just had.
Yeah, let's just put it this way. I picked up Shipbreakers to play because I needed something pleasant after slogging through Final Fantasy 12.
Uh-huh.
And I just like taking things apart.
Right. All right.
And explosions.
Explosive decompression. But yes, so for our first news topic of the night, I'm going to go ahead and keep rolling. The Heart of Russia DLC for Eurotruck is postponed indefinitely. So
this is Eurotruck, which was a Game Club game like a couple months back now.
Yeah.
And this has been their upcoming DLC. They've been teasing this for several months now. And according to the announcement, in February, when shit went down, they were 4 to 6 weeks out from releasing the game, releasing the DLC. It kind of quietly put a hold on it, just to wait to see what went down. And for those who are listening to this in the future, hello. I'm glad that we as a race survived.
Me too.
And the current year, Russia and Ukraine are still having their war.
Right, still duking it out after Russia started a war.
Yeah, because of course, right?
Yep.
Because Putin has no dick. And he's trying to reestablish the Soviet Union before the asshole cancer gets him.
Indeed.
I mean, I'm just assuming that it's there because, he's all asshole, allegedly.
It has grown and spread. But the point is that they delayed the release of this DLC because of the world events. And
they basically did what Nintendo was doing.
Yeah.
With Advance Wars, where it felt weird to release it while the game inadvertently mirrors a conflict in Nintendo's part. In SC Soft's part, it's the fact that they're trying to show the beauty and the landscape of Russia and how awesome it is, and it felt really, really off. And I can't blame them.
And they didn't say this, or if they did, I missed it. But I feel like the sentiment is like we could be painted as being weirdly pro-Russian in this, and we don't want to back or make it seem like we approve of Russia's actions, so we're just gonna wait. And I do think that there are certain things where that companies or studios or people from those studios should politically speak up and out against. Given this situation, though, I think it makes sense and is a good move for them to be like, yeah, we're just not going to do anything. We'll acknowledge why we're not doing anything because this, could look bad.
Yeah, because they had already announced the DLC beforehand.
Yeah.
And they were 6 to 8 weeks away from completing the work. So, it's mostly done. They didn't, they give this sentiment that they're just sitting on it for now. They're not, just trashing everything.
Yeah.
Or at least that's how I read it.
I also read it that way. I didn't see anything that said that they were just going to scrap it and start over. Does it make sense to do that? I mean, this will all blow over at some point, or we'll all wind up dead somehow. So I don't see why they couldn't just sit on it for a while, but
yeah, and I have seen some people complaining, saying, well, they should just sell it and donate the proceeds to Ukraine, which on one hand, I do like the idea of, but it also feels weird to talk about how awesome Russia is as a country, and then use that to fund Ukraine. It feels look how awesome the enemy is, right?
Yeah, I do like that idea though.
Yeah, but I do also see why they want to do it, because they are a company. They do need to make money. Yeah, this isn't like their little skins that they could sell for DLC skins that they sell. And I know that they've done a charity skin for that already. Yeah, the DLC is what really funds a fair amount of their stuff. So it's also one hell of a statement to say, yeah, we're just not doing that.
Yeah, we're not going to sell something.
I'm pretty sure that they need, the lead truck and the follow truck for the amount of balls it takes to do that.
Yeah, for a company to say, well, we could sell something that would make us a lot of money, but we're not going to because it could be problematic.
Mm-hmm.
Good on them. But yeah, I don't know what else to say. This is a pretty straightforward news story.
Yeah, I would hope that uh, they are just going to move ahead to the next DLC and try to quickly wrap it up. Because there are major holes in the map. They could go down to Spain and start working there. There's less issue there, right?
Yeah, for now.
True. Or they could just start working on removing Britain.
No longer in Europe.
Here, go hang out with Iceland.
I mean, that doesn't sound so bad.
Oh, but any other thoughts?
I don't think so. So our next one, France bans official use of anglicized gamer words.
Yeah, so this one, as an outsider, sounds really weird, but this is more of a culture thing. Okay?
Yeah.
Along with, well, we'll get into that. European cultures, particularly France and Italy, have laws and customs in place to protect their culture. Particularly when it comes to food and language. All right?
Yeah.
And France is banning the official use of things like streamer and gamer from essentially government documents because it's a barrier to understanding for non-gamers. Which at one point I understand, but at the other point it becomes a really mouthful to try to eliminate a shorter phrase.
Yeah.
For example, the French translation for streamer will become live direct host. If I remember the translation properly, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
it's just a jumble, right?
Yeah. I don't. This sort of
Live,
thing, trying to control this.
live player host is what streamer yeah gets translated from.
Yeah.
So,
This will never work. Trying to police the speech of your citizens is basically impossible. You can enforce it at certain points, but it's not going to change what normal, everyday people say.
yeah, this is more of an official thing.
This feels like an old man yells at cloud kind of situation. Like, we don't like the purity of our language being, destroyed by these words. So let's keep them out.
Well, probably my favorite one out of the four that's really highlighted here is esports becomes jewel video de competition, competitive video game, because
Right.
that's not going to be confusing at all, right?
No. Oh, my computer's just beeping at me. What are you beeping for, computer? Craig didn't break, so I guess I'll figure it out later. But yeah, this seems like a waste of time and effort that old men in suits who have too much time and money to complain about normal stuff are like, we can't have this.
Well, mind you, this is only for essentially government workers in official documentation. So, you can't list your job as, streamer. You have to do, live game host.
Right.
Which, right?
Live game. That makes me think of a game show.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, pro gamer. is was oh hang on okay, so and I keep miscopying it. I'm just copying this into Google Translate because my French is terrible. But essentially, pro gamer is professional player, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. We'll see. There might be some of the motivations for this that I'm not like picking up on. Maybe like economic motivations or something, but
Oh, I think this is more of a cultural thing.
yeah.
U.S. as much as they try to fight it these days, is the Great Melting Pot. We don't have really an issue borrowing other words.
Yeah.
From pretty much anywhere. So it's just the French language tries to remain essentially pure, at least at a governmental level,
Yeah.
and it's just a culture thing. And I kind of wanted to highlight it as just a oddity, but also something to talk about.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
mind you, these are not banned. The police in striped shirts isn't going to come break down your door and beat you with a baguette if you use the word streamer in French in
Polizia.
France. This is for official documentation, So it sounds a lot stranger than what it really is,
Yeah. Fair enough. All right.
But also, it kind of made me laugh.
It is a funny title.
So, yeah, moving along to something that's not as funny. Lootbox laws block Diablo Immortal launch in Belgium and Netherlands because, of course, they do, right?
Of course.
So, I honestly have not been watching Diablo Immortal.
Me neither.
I was not really aware that it was coming out. It's honestly a bubble title, so, all right.
Not very interested in those.
Bubble with a Windows release as well, so that should tell you exactly what to expect with this.
Yeah.
But since the release of the last Diablo game, which actually Overwatch. Since the release of Overwatch, that's where they would get in trouble. Belgium and the Netherlands have gotten hardcore about loot boxes. So Activision Blizzard, instead of fixing their shitty game mechanics, decided, won't launch there, and we'll ban them from downloading it on the Google Play Store because, right?
Right. Good thinking.
And got like the quote in the update. Diablo Immortal will not be available in Belgium or the Netherlands and will not appear on Battle.net or the Belgium and Netherlands app or Google Play Store. Activision Blizzard drone said. This is related to the current operating environment for games in those countries. According to pre-registrations for the game, are not accessible in those markets. Current operating environment. They outlawed your shit. I mean, it's a Diablo game. I mean, it's honestly, it looks like a kind of a shit Diablo game, especially whenever they have the trailer, the PC announced trailer built for mobile.
Yep.
Ugh, right?
Yep. That's the feeling I get too. Don't like that.
Built for mobile, but crossplay on PC. I mean, if you want a better ARPG, just go play Torchlight, right? Or Torchlight 2 specifically. Don't touch 3. It's a mistake.
Then I won't. But yeah, I don't know.
It's more, uh, as more countries step up, it'll become less incentivized to, put these mechanics in the games because they're going to have fewer and fewer places that they can release. Uh, to give an example of something like this, but not directly related. Gotham Knights just announced in the last week or two that they canceled their Russian translation because there's an embargo in Russia, obviously,
Right.
and they basically did a cost benefit analysis, and the other countries that speak predominantly Russian, it's just not worth it to do the full translation because, right?
Yeah. Which makes sense.
I mean, it sucks, but at the same time, right?
It does suck, but it makes sense.
So that's really the only way you're going to be able to kill these loot boxes is just, ban them in enough countries or enough high market countries that, it makes more sense for them to not do it and do something else than it is to, exploit people, right?
Right.
But then again, you get FIFA money, so... Or sorry, FC Club or whatever the hell EA is doing it now because EA and FIFA, two incredibly corrupt and money-grubbing companies, couldn't come with even a slight agreement.
Yeah. Wouldn't trust any of them as far as I could throw them. All right. Do you have anything else you want to add to this one?
Not really. It's more of a kind of a point and laugh, huh?
Yep. Okay. Oh, go ahead.
But I would say makes me feel a little bit better that at least a small chunk is gone.
Yeah.
But I also just wonder just how much is loot boxes in this. If they have loot boxes in an ARPG, which is essentially a loot generating game anyway, right?
Yep.
Just how bad is this?
Yeah.
But then the answer is mobile game.
Right. Bad. Very bad. All right. Final news topic of the night. Embracer establishes the let me start that over. Embracer establishes the Embracer Games Archive to, quote, save as much of the games industry as possible, end quote.
To sell.
Yes, to sell.
Most likely.
Yeah.
But also, this feels so weird, doesn't it? It's really unusual to see a rights holder actively trying to save games and archive games, and right.
Yeah, but like we were talking about in the pre-show, it's a situation where there's so little archival, games industry, or games archival and access to play going on, a company doing even the barest of minimum or being like, oh yeah, they're totally gonna profit off of this later. Like the fact that they're doing is like, oh, well, looky there, that's good.
I mean, it does look like they're mostly working on physical stuff as well. So they're trying to contact collectors to sell them stuff. Now the question is, what are they going to do with this, right?
Yeah. I mean, and they're probably going to sell it, but if they don't, then what?
I mean, part of me would like to see them re-release some of these classic games that just are not out there anymore.
Yeah.
As a working thing, sort of like how GOG at least used to do. I'm not sure if they still do, where they go in and at least get like DOSBox to get it working and that sort of thing. and have a like proper re-releases or remasters of some classic games that just you cannot find anymore. You know,
Yeah.
or some of these collector's items that sure you could get it, but do you really need both your kidneys? Right?
Yeah. Or even any of them, just get a
Mhm.
fancy dialysis machine.
So they are trying to do this with mostly physical stuff, physical video games, consoles, and accessories. Essentially, sounds like they're building a museum.
Right.
And the thing is, just
Well,
first of all, where because if they could do a proper gaming museum, there's been efforts before, but it's basically been a digital affair. I
yeah.
would like to see it, right?
Agreed. Agreed.
And
Do you
it's also nice to see gaming treated as an art form instead of, who cares about this game? Nobody played it anyway,
right.
or nobody plays it anymore. Let's just toss it aside. A good example would be like, well, I mentioned EverQuest. I mean, there was a story that popped up a couple weeks ago about a guild that basically. How familiar are you with EverQuest?
Somewhat familiar, but it's been a long time.
Okay, so there's in the second or third expansion, mind you, EverQuest is up to like expansion 20 now. There's a one-time event that goes off by killing certain raid bosses all at the same time. It's something that you have to kind of deliberately do, all right? And it triggers a one-time story event.
Okay.
And once that event happens, the bosses that you were killing are permanently gone from that server. And this guild, because another guild was trying to horn in on their farm that they've had for years at this point, purposely triggered the event to screw over the other guild. Because, right?
Yeah. People got to be dicks.
Mm-hmm. And I think it was also on a PvP server, so that makes it doubly so, right?
Yep.
But yeah, there's no preservation of the server in the old state. There's no preservation of these online games. Like another good example is like Darkspore. That's a game that was a sequel to, love it or hate it, a very important game. Very because that was the last game that Will Wright had direct control over. So who was that's the father of the Sims. Because you can't go play that anymore because most of the stuff was online servers. All it is now collector's items in a box, right?
Yep.
I mean, online gaming is obviously the kind of the obvious go-to place for game conservation because you just can't do it anymore.
Yeah, not without recreating an entire, server environment and everything.
And never mind the fact that reverse engineering a lot of stuff as well that just might be spaghetti code to begin with.
Yeah. So, kind of circling around back, I'm happy that the game preservation is being done.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like who's doing it, but beggars can't be choosers.
Yeah.
I think that
I mean, especially at this rate, because right.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just thinking. I don't think I've got anything else to add. Do you have anything else? Any final
Not
thoughts?
really.
Okay. Any Final Fantasy thoughts? No, I'm joking. Let's not.
Yeah, don't get me started.
All right. Well, Rach, where can people send us stuff if they want to send us stuff?
Well, you can do so over at vglpodcast@gmail.com. Drop by the Discord, which you can find over at vglpodcast.podbean.com. Or you can drop by the Twitter, which is VGL Podcast on, Twitter.
Indeed. So we're coming in at a good clip, but I would be lying if I said that I wasn't tired. I'm actually standing. Yeah, I'm actually standing right now. One of the best things about the way that my mic is now situated is it's very easy for me to stand up or sit down. And if I did it stealthily, you didn't even hear the transition.
Oh, I did hear you rip a good fart, so.
Right? Actually, my tummy is quite upset. I think that might be why I'm feeling so tired right now.
Oh, you ate the Jif peanut butter.
If it was not a game club night, I would have said like, "Hey man, I feel nauseous," but because it's game club, I wanted to go ahead and like get it done.
Yeah, not suffer another week of Final Fantasy.
No,
because I was pretty much, if I wanted to continue the story, I either had to go back several hours and grind, or figure out a way to do game shortcuts.
Yeah. No, we wanted this fantasy to be the final one for now. So no extra weeks.
Yeah, this doesn't make me enthusiastic about Final Fantasy 16. Because that's supposedly going to be launched either this year or next. And at the trajectory that they're going, right?
Yeah, I mean, I hope it's good, but no expectations, no expectations of goodness.
I mean, if they, based off of what they did with Final Fantasy 15, you're going to have to like watch 2 TV shows, get like a comic book,
a documentary series,
buy a few cases of ramen,
right?
Because you gotta have the merchandising tie-in somewhere. So make it soda this time, right?
Yeah.
That's the marble sodas, by the way. Oh, and don't forget, you gotta buy the complete set of the body pillows.
Already got them. Wink.
Yeah, but you're weird because you're just sleeping with Kamari all the time.
I mean, let's be real. I'll sleep with anybody. I don't have any standards.
Yeah, but it's Kamari. He sucks.
Ah.
Oh no! Wait, of course. That's why you like him. He sucks.
Hell yeah.
So, since we're not doing the doobly-doo, once again, all the way back up to the top, if you wish to contact us, vglpodcast@gmail.com with your letters, voicemails, gaming-related topics, or tweet into us at vglpodcast. Unless you want to do socials, right?
Yeah,
or you just want to get out of here.
You could hit him with them socials. That only takes a minute or two.
I've been Caffeine Rage. You can find me tweeting occasionally over at Gaming with CR. Or if you wish to be my friend, you can find me over at Steam Caffeine Rage.
And I've been Jared. You can find me tweeting some bullshit over at JMA4707. You can find me when they happen over at twitch.tv/RunicArts, where that I play tabletop games as usually terrible characters who eat people. And then you can be a friend on Steam, send your friend requests to jarthur4707. And of course, as mentioned earlier, hit up the Discord, chat with you there.
So, shall I get us out of here now?
Yes, take us home.
I'm not falling for that one again. So, I already covered the email. If you wish to drop by the Discord, you can find a link to that over at vglpodcast.podbean.com. Or if you wish to share the love, you can find us on your podcatcher of choice. Our lovely, lovely patrons have made this possible, especially to shit on Final Fantasy 12. And you can find out more about that over at patreon.com/VGL podcast. Our intro and outro music is On the Ground by Kim McLeod. You can find his work over at Incompetech.com. And
as always, as this lovely music starts to roll across my voice, bye-bye now.
See you next time.
Bye-bye.